Hi, this is Jim again, and this is a project that I worked on in 2005. It was radio tracking wombats that have been raised in wildlife shelters. Misfortunately, a lot of wombats are hit on the road, and it's always a good policy to check the pouch. Quite often you'll find the young in the pouch, and the poor old young will die along with the mother. But if you can get the animal out of the pouch and take it into one of the wildlife shelters, you will find that they've got a fair chance of survival. Now, this project was done particularly to find out how the survival rate of the species is after we release them into the wild. My emails and things have changed since then, but it is still interesting. You can contact me through the YouTube website. But they are adorable little creatures when they're young, the juveniles. They play like cats. The only trouble is they're like little bulldozers, and before you think about keeping them at home, of course you've got to have a permit, but they're like little bulldozers when they roar around the house. But they are a gorgeous little animal to watch, and they're gorgeous little animals to work with. Go away. This was all done from Maryknoll Wildlife Shelter and Healesville Sanctuary with the appropriate permits. There's Jenny. How could anybody hate a face like that? A beautiful little animal. Very intelligent. People think wombats are not, but they are very, very intelligent little animals. And I can tell you now, when you go and work with them in the field, you get very fond of them. They've all got their own little personalities. They're all just beautiful. This is one of the guys we released. This is the last view I actually had of him. I never saw this wombat again after this. Sometimes you can track them, and sometimes you can't. This is another one that we were about to release at the time. And if you see right on the back side, there's a little brown thing. Well, that's the radio transmitter. And we have a way of putting the transmitters on which don't hurt the animals. These animals shed their hair once a year. This is David Middleton up at the Healesville Sanctuary when we're about to put the transmitter on the animal. This was an experimentation which hadn't been done before. We tried a different way of fitting transmitters. The old way used to be cutting a flap of skin and putting the transmitter under the skin, which I didn't approve of. And we tried an experiment with these guys, and the experiment worked quite well, and it's actually changed the way a lot of Australian wildlife is actually tracked nowadays. There is a little demonstration shortly when we're putting it in. One of the first things we do when we're about to release an animal is that we go out to the field and we check every single wombat burrow to see if there's any sign of wombats resident in the hollows. Wombats use 3 to 5 hollows, so you've got to go and check them all out. And the young ones, we always get them to crawl in and out of the holes. It's much easier. And we get out, check the animals, check each hole on a regular basis for a couple of weeks before we release the animal. And then once we release the animal, we know that it's got a new set of holes to live in, burrows to live in. We mark these hub burrows so we can find them later on in the dark. And this is the wombat now anaesthetised. They actually chew when they're anaesthetised. And what we actually do is we sat down with the mat, a wire gauze mat, which is the one you use to block your spoutings with. And there it is there. What we do is we use a hook, we pull the hair through the wire gauze, and once we get all the hair through the wire gauze, then we put araldite on the hair to the wire gauze, which means that there's an airspace between the wire gauze and the skin, so that's not going to cause problems with the skin. And because it's hooked onto the hair is actually holding it. The wombat will lose it within 12 months regardless whether we lose the animal or not. And here we go, pulling the hair through. It's a very tiring task. and on the rear end of the animal where the hair is very coarse, of course. And the animals do have a tendency of scraping their back against the side of the burrows and trees, which gives you a bit of problems when you're putting the transmitters on this way. But it seems to work, and it seems to work well. Okay, this is mixing up the araldite, painting the araldite on, which looks very messy, but it's not. I've seen these animals 3 and 6 months later after they've lost the transmitter, and there's just a small patch where there's a bit less hair than everywhere else, and that's nothing unusual with these guys because they're always rubbing their backs everywhere they go. Okay, we're now about to fit the transmitter. This is the little transmitter. It's a self-sealed unit with a little oscillator, on FM oscillator, and it's all self-contained inside that little box there. And it's a 3-minute araldite, so you have to hold it for 3 minutes whilst the araldite goes off. But once it goes off, we're in business, and that's right. The transmitter's batteries last about 3 months in the field, and we can usually track these gorgeous guys for about 3 months. So there it is there. It's glued onto the hair. It's actually on that piece of mat. We take the wombat back to the shelter, the wildlife shelter, and we put it in the cage with minimal exposure to people from now on. And the wombat spends about 3 to 4 days there to make sure that there's no ill effects from the anaesthetic or any ill effects from the transmitter being on, to see if the animal's quite happy with it, not bothering it. It's quite normal these animals have a bit of mess hanging on their rear end. From time to time they get stuck. But that doesn't seem to bother them. And one thing I can tell you from working with these guys, you do get so fond of them. They're gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous, their personality. Okay, Reg is now taking it out in the field. We're just saying our last goodbyes. We've got the crew there set up, ready to start radio tracking. And it's always an emotional strain to take the animals away and release them, because the shelter spent a long time working with the animal, saving its life, bringing it back to health, getting it up to the stage where it can be released, and then taking it out to release it. It is always a very heavy emotional strain on them, but without the work that they're doing, we wouldn't have anywhere near the knowledge on wombats we have today. Okay, we've now got the wombat at the hole. I've gone to infrared on the camera, and the idea is to get the wombat to go into the hole, and then we pull away slowly and start following the wombat during the night as he moves around and gets used to his new territory. He's already walked his territory in the daylight. We've walked him around there on several occasions, so he knows the place. It's not as if we just dump him in the bush. And a bit of a rustle of the stick, and the wombat takes off down the burrow. And of course, he goes into the burrow, and he's quite happy now, and he stays there. But wait a minute, Reg, don't go away, you've got to stay. They are so much fun. I love working with these guys, and it's heartbreaking to release them. Okay, as the night goes on, this is the sound we're actually hunting for, and the beep is off the little transmitter on the wombat's back, and we can follow that around in the forest at night. And believe me, it's a long night, and if you're lucky you find out where they're going to burrow in the next morning. And when I was doing this work, the only successful way I found was to actually go out and live in the forest for a week. so that I could actually be with the animal day and night in case he moved during the day. And it's very hard. Now this is me, hard at work. As you can see,
hard at work, waiting for the wombat to move.
Beeping,
Day
and I
2.
had a little portable TV with me to fill in the hours during the day. But at night time, the guys get up and they start moving, and you start following. And these guys are buggers when they're going through the bush. And it got down to 4.5 degrees that night. It was a cold night. So anyway, guys, here's the wombats, the young ones, just a bit more footage on them. I thought you'd like to see them. And as you can see, they're just absolutely adorable. Now these wildlife shelters are all around the state and all around Australia. They mostly do it out of their own bat, out of their own pockets. Any help that can be offered to them is gratefully appreciated. If you have trouble with any wildlife, just ring them up. They'll give you a hand if they can. And you're doing something for the future. Because of this work, my grandchildren will be able to see these guys out in the paddocks, out in the fields. They'll be able to enjoy them. Without the work that we've been doing on them, we'd lose them all. What a magic little animal. Just watch him now and tell me what you think.